All right, we're live on Facebook. B, what's good, brother?
All right. What's happening?
Hey, thank you for joining us in the studio again today, man.
Yeah, man. It's always good to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is episode 15 of By the Block with Bryan Chavis, man. Super excited about that. So, hey, showing a level of consistency here, just continually dedicated to putting out good content, man. And
yeah, man, the people are responding.
Absolutely.
To the content, man. I think people are ultimately that's what they're really looking for, man, is that content.
Yep.
That true content that can really come from individuals that have at some level experience.
Exactly.
Owning and operating and managing thousands of units. I think a lot of the content and stuff that we're talking about, especially from the book, I think it's resonating with a lot of individuals. Yep. Man. We're just blessed to be here, man. That at the end of the day, we're just blessed to
absolutely
to be able to turn all this experience into something that people are really benefiting from.
Yep. We had a great coaching call today as well. Great coaching session. Got new members joining the Matrix, which is exciting. So it's continually growing.
Yeah. The multifamily matrix is, I'm really excited about where that is in 2020 and where we take it, because it's evolved from the, from its concept of me and you putting that together several months ago. So just to see it evolve and to be able to see the individuals that are a part of the matrix evolve as individuals, investors. It's I'm thrilled, man. I'm thrilled. We should be proud. You should be proud of what we've built,
exactly,
and where it's headed.
Yeah, I'm definitely proud. I mean, it's just continually getting better and better. So we've got some new features that we've added in. We're working on, adding in, some new features to our investment analyzer as well. So that's really exciting. Yeah. And, today in our podcast, what we're going to talk about, what you're going to be learning when you're listening along, we're going to talk about the letter of intent, why that's important throughout negotiation, but then also key contract points. So in your book, you've listed 12 different key contract points. I'd love for you to, take a moment to break that down when we get there. But this is a really cool and exciting podcast because this is a big part of the negotiation and, putting your deal together. So
absolutely.
So with the letter of intent, so after we've negotiated the deal and we submit the letter of intent, some people think that's like a binding contract. Why do we submit a letter of intent? And also we know it's not a binding contract, but what's the importance of a letter of intent?
Right. Yeah. We know it's not a binding contract. The vast majority of our audience may or may not know.
That's true.
It's not a binding contract. What it is just basically your with the letter, the title, your intent to purchase a property. There's arguments to be made. You can do certain things to your letter of intent to be taken more seriously. But I think at the end of the day, as you develop your track record, and most that are listening to the podcast might be seasoned, or they may just be starting out. So let's talk about those who are just starting out and those who are seasoned.
Right.
For those starting out, the letter of intent is important that you really, are using a well established document, and we have a copy of our letter of intent actually in the book, Buy It, Rent It, Profit. I'm not sure what page it's on, but you can go into the appendix and see.
Correct.
So there's no excuse for not having a well drafted letter of intent, because there's one for free right in Buy It, Rent It, Profit. But really, to get those out, the idea of the letter of intent is to be able to put as many of letter of intents out on projects that you're interested in. Okay. And then of course, obviously you want to be able to get the response back from the seller and move to the next phase, which is the PSA, purchase and sales agreement. And then that's when we can really get into, the next phase, which is, that you hopefully that you get into, which is that contract phase, and, what that entails, because that's when things really get serious.
Exactly.
The letter of intent, it's not a legal binding contract. You can put as many of those out that you want. You might get responded to at the end of the day. And I'll say something, for me, that's important in a letter of intent. I typically never try to put a letter of intent out. Let's just say a property's, being advertised for $10 million. Nowadays, a lot of commercial brokers are getting smart and they're doing what they call whisper price. They won't tell you what the price is, but they're like, whisper price is around $5 million.
Right.
You might think it's only worth 3.8, but in the letter of intent, I'm not going to put 3.8 million as my letter of intent. I want to be taken seriously and get into negotiations. So I'll put the letter of intent out for $5 million, what they're asking.
Okay.
Once I get into the contract, under contract, then that's a total different conversation. Then I begin to whittle away based on my findings of why I think the property is worth 3.8 truly. With the underwriting, and we'll start sending screenshots over to the seller or the seller's representation of, hey, this is what we're uncovering about the market. This is what we're finding. Units being off market. You have pro forma that you can receive, $1,200. We actually see that if we listed at $1,200, these units will be sitting vacant for 5 to 6 weeks. Lost to income, lost to lease income is X, Y, and Z. So really, so you begin to start, playing chess.
Right.
And then so you begin to uncover true facts, whether those, operating costs, and typically the operating costs are always higher than what the seller is advertising or the seller's representation is advertising. So as you begin to, go through your due diligence process and the granular process, we'll get into that.
Okay.
But that's when you begin to really, identify the price point that you want to pay for the property. But my point to this whole thing was, in the letter of intent, I'm not really offending you. So if you say it's worth $5 million, it's worth $5 million.
Right.
Okay. We're going to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
If we go into contract. So, but, I'm not offending anyone. I'm not putting in a letter of intent, lowballing.
Yep.
For me, I just never thought that technique works. And some might, I'm a lowball everybody, and some may say it's not really lowballing. It's really the value. But the one thing people have to realize is a seller's idea of value is maybe not always realistic to what's going on in the market. So, I'm not going to offend you.
Right.
I'll get it under contract, and then I'll present my findings after my due diligence period. And I'll say, hey, I found that it's really worth 3.8 based on my findings. And then from there, we may have an opportunity, because my findings are solid. We may have an opportunity to do a deal, and we may not have to, or we may have to walk away. Some may argue that, well, Bryan, your process is actually just dragging out. Why go through 60 to 90-day due diligence, and you're really only offering 3.8? I would have just offered 3.8 up front, and then if they had said no, they said no. And there's something to be made for that argument.
Of course.
But I would rather get you under contract, get you in the mindset that this thing will close, and get you into that mindset to where you're feeling comfortable that, hey, yes, this property's under contract, we're going to have this particular project sold, and then for me to start, whittling you down versus offend you right up front, and I may not have an opportunity, especially if I feel like it's a good value add play or a good opportunity. I don't want to be offensive in the beginning. I want to get you into negotiations, begin to build that relationship, and then really try to, get you to see the light.
Absolutely.
And then if the deal doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. But also, my rebuttal, my argument would be, if my due diligence process is on point, then, really, we begin to, it's not going to take me 90 days to uncover all of this. Right. So, it's really not 90 days worth of work. I might begin to start having these conversations within day 5 or 6. So, at the end of the day, like I said, arguments can be made on both sides, but I just feel like, out of experience, this has worked for me, not to offend anybody, but to begin to put it under a contract and then show facts. And then, let them come back and tell me, oh, no, this is why, you know what I mean? Because now the numbers don't lie. Now you have to tell me why I should overpay for this particular project. When we're looking at the numbers and they blatantly show that you have an inflated price, now you have to, not based on emotion, but now based on facts, you have to tell me why you feel like this property is valued at the price point that you put it at.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Is it because you just hired a commercial real estate broker who's put together this fancy packet and, you got to pay for those fees? Typically that could be the problem. And not to knock any commercial brokers out there. We big shout out to all of our commercial brokers. We love them. They do an excellent job. But let's just be honest. Sometimes you have to pay for those. They're not getting into this game for free. You have to pay those commissions, and those commissions usually hike up the price. And so, at the end of the day, this is the reality that any investor has to deal with, unless you're finding these properties wholesale or directly to the seller. This is what we're faced with as investors. So
absolutely. No, I love the thoroughness, and you said something in the coaching call today is that you need to be quick but don't hurry, and that's really important as we continually week after week we go through this podcast. Our goal is to help you guys buy it, rent it, and profit. There's you're sending out this letter of intent. You don't want to get too hasty, and you got to be thorough because these are things you're going to be holding for a while. So.
Everyone's goal is to do a project,
of course,
in the first quarter of the year.
Correct.
Right? Everybody wants to post a number.
Right.
Coach Wooden used to always say, be quick, but don't hurry.
Right.
And so that's something, that I didn't get it directly from Coach Wooden. I've got it from a watered down version from my other coaches, but in my years of playing, that's something we often heard. Be quick, but don't hurry.
Correct.
And that's, really that's you have to adopt that philosophy. I want to do a deal just as bad as the next person, but I'm not going to put my investors at risk, right, or ourselves or my reputation at risk because I want to put a number or post a number and put it up on the board.
Yeah.
To show everybody or to do a deal. So, at the end of the day, you have to be thorough in what you do, and you have to make sure that, one of the things we talked about in the coaching call today was you got to make sure that, you're not going to catch a dropping knife.
Exactly.
There's a lot of things happening, that may be happening. We have a new election. We have an election coming up. Negotiations with China, it's like one day, it seems like it's very, turbulent. All this affects, the economy. And then, right, what affects the economy typically affects a certain demographic or psychographic that is your prospect tenant.
Exactly.
And depending on the asset classes that you're operating under, and this could have major effects on your prospect tenant's demographic. Ideally, if whatever affects your tenant affects the net operating income, whatever affects the net operating income affects the value of your asset. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you have to forecast, and no one wants to get caught dropping, get caught with with catching a dropping knife. So you just have to make sure that, that, you want to be quick, but you don't necessarily want to hurry into a project. You want to dot your I's and cross your T's.
Absolutely. And before we get into the contract points, I'd like to take a moment to just mention our sponsors. This podcast is actually sponsored by Buy It, Rent It, Profit, the best-selling book from Bryan Chavis. It is a international bestseller. You can find it in bookstores at Amazon. You can find it in Barnes and Noble,
Target,
Walmart. Yeah, make sure you grab a copy of that. And this podcast is also brought to you by the Multifamily Matrix. That is our weekly training and coaching segment where we are, working with you in a group setting to help you reach all of your goals. So please join us each week. We have our coaching calls on Thursdays at 10 a.m. It's multifamilymatrix.com. We hope that you can join us in the Matrix. And so as we, and actually we do have a giveaway for you. So if you go to bryanchavis.com/LOI, we have a sample letter of intent form for you. So go to bryanchavis.com.
Awesome.
LOI. We love giving out free stuff. So we've got that for you as well. In your book, it's like page 70, you talk about the contract phase. And so, you've got 12 contract points on here, and I wanted to have you take me through these. So purchase price, clearly stating the purchase price in your contract. Why is that important?
I mean, for obvious reasons, because now it's a contract. So now we have to get to the purchase price. So, you just want to clearly state, and again, that's probably, one of the least, it's like, oh, that's nothing critical, but you'd be surprised. It is, you want to make sure that you have the right price, because once you enter into the contract and you put your money and money goes, the clock ticks to go hard. You want to make sure all of your I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So you want to make sure you have the right amounts. I liken it to things that but that's obvious. But you'll be surprised how many times people put obvious legal notices, and I liken it to when you do a 3-day notice for a tenant. Some people may misspell the name on the lease or on the on the legal form, right? But you look on the lease is spelled Bryan, but in a hurry, you spell on the 3-day notice the name Brian.
Got it.
Well, it can get thrown. The 3-day notice to vacate could get thrown, or for non-payment of rent could get thrown out of court because of that. So just some small things like, things you think are obvious,
right,
sometimes can come back to bite you in the butt. So just making sure that you understand, what price point is in, that you're not hurrying and you're putting a correct, dollar amount. Because when you're talking about $15-20 million multifamily deals, sometimes that decimal, I'm dyslexic.
Right. So
sometimes that decimal, more than one decimal can confuse you. So you just want to make sure you're putting the right.
Absolutely. I mean, and these are life-changing numbers that, so you definitely, once again, quick, but don't hurry. Mm-hmm. Make sure you slow down and go comb through these
Correct.
12 points.
Correct.
So number 2, you listed that it's a minimum of a 30-day due diligence period. Why are we doing a minimum of 30 days to do due diligence? That seems like a long time.
Oh, well, I'd prefer 90, but, and try to close in 30 and get it done.
Right.
I'd prefer the contract under 90.
Okay.
Because, you just never, at the end of the day, everyone wants you to rush.
Right.
We just put a project together and, can you rush the the due diligence period? I think you remember. Absolutely not. Can you think you can close within, more than absolutely not. This particular portfolio consisted of, of some older units.
Correct.
Older apartment buildings. Absolutely not.
Right.
But that's what they want you to do. The seller's representation, not to paint a lot of our commercial brokers in a bad light. That's not what we're talking about. But I'm just being realistic on this podcast. That's what we're here to do.
Absolutely.
A lot of people want you to rush. Let's get this thing done under contract. That's how they get paid, by putting numbers up. But at the end of the day, you can't allow anyone to rush your process.
Right.
No, we're going to walk each and every one of these units. We're going to walk the interior, exterior. My maintenance guys are going to walk the units. My contractor's going to walk the units. We're going to do a forensic audit. We're going to get into that. But, there's a process that we have, and we will not be rushed out of that process.
We will not be rushed.
Absolutely.
All right. So number 3, you listed access to files, including leases. And I've seen you do this before. As we were transitioning into the, the more technological age, I remember the big file folders that you used to break out. And,
you remember those, Nate?
Hey, man.
Amazing.
I was right on the tail end of that, but I saw it. We sat down with lease after lease, combing through it. So tell me more about that.
And you still got to comb through the leases with the technology.
Yeah,
I still want to see the actual lease.
Yep.
We might be logging into Buildium and we might be getting a PDF of all the leases, but we still got to comb through all the leases.
Yeah, but I just wanted to stress that because this is something you don't comb over. Like, you don't just brush over. So
correct.
Why is it important to have access to all
the files?
Because
I want access to the lease.
Okay.
Because that's a contract. So if all hell breaks loose and I'm in court, the judge doesn't want your rent roll. The judge wants to see the contract.
Right.
So what the contract says is what is the truth.
Right.
Is the gospel truth. So looking at a rent roll, you can have the dates, of the lease.
Yep.
A 7-month lease or a 12-month lease on the rent roll and a 7-month on the contract. So, you can doctor up a rent roll. So I want to you can doctor up a contract too, but I want to see the contract. What are you under contract? I want to see the signature of the ownership, management, and the signature of the tenant. And what does that contract say?
Right.
If that says 7 months, then that's the gospel truth. but sometimes the lease may not correspond with the actual rent roll.
Right.
And they do that because when you look at the rent roll, you want to see as much 12-month leases as you possibly can. If you can get away with it, then obviously you're you're getting over, because at the end of the day, 12 months means stability.
Right.
So sometimes you might see some in there that are that the leases are actually gone month to month. They're rollover leases.
Yeah.
So they're actually, if the vast majority of the leases have gone month to month and you didn't catch that, you're walking into a particular project thinking you have 7 to 12 months solid leases.
Wow,
and some of these leases are month to month, and then people may not like you and your new management style, your new rules and regulations that you're coming with, because typically that rubs people the wrong way, especially when you're buying these value add projects. They're typically used to a management style that's not really, all that, managing.
Right.
So now you come in with your rules and regulations and your qualifying criteria. You've seen it at Park Plaza that I've just done. I'm coming in with the new rules, no smoking in common areas. Things like that rub people the wrong way. No bikes on the, in the walkways and things like that. It rubbed, certain people who wanted, to not adhere to a certain lifestyle that we wanted to portray at Park Plaza. So those folks started putting in their notices. Well, what if these folks are all month to month? They can put in a 30-day notice and really, no repercussion.
Right.
You thinking you got a 12-month lease? You're like, oh, you can't put a notice in. You'll owe me through the duration of the lease. No, I'm month to month. No, you're not. Look at this rent roll. Oh, yes, I am. Look at this lease contract that I have a copy of. So now you're, oh, man, I didn't catch that. No, you didn't, because you didn't do your forensic audit. So, it's just understanding that, the rent roll can say one thing, but the lease contract can say another. And then to go a step further, the lease contract can say something, but the bank statement can say something different. So now I got to check the lease contract with the bank statement.
Right.
First, I was checking against the rent roll with the lease contract. Now I'm checking the lease contract against the bank statement. And that's the final.
Man, you're going to make me rich, man.
Yes, sir.
All this knowledge that you're dropping, man. If you're listening to this podcast right now, I want you to just stop for a moment, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment.
Please.
Leave a review.
Share with a friend or family
it's
that
ridiculous.
you want to build wealth with.
I mean, I'm listening to this, and I've been honored to work with you for years now. We're growing our portfolio, man, but it's amazing. I mean, the amount of free spreadsheets that don't work, all this misinformation that's being passed around. Please, subscribe and just lock yourself into some really solid knowledge. But I'll keep it moving, man. I don't want to digress too much.
No, speak to the people. Nate. Speak to the people.
We're good.
No,
we're giving them the real knowledge here. So these aren't free. Free spreadsheets.
We're dropping bombs. I wish one of these days
we'll have it all labeled. But yeah, this is not some free spreadsheet you get in the Facebook group. This is real knowledge based on real actual management. So, if your deals are falling through because you don't have experience, make sure you come to bryanchavis.com.
And that's something else that's important, because you do see a lot of spreadsheets, but a lot of the spreadsheets are not properly calculating IRRs, are not properly calculating discount rates, and there's a lot of things within the spreadsheet, and there's nothing, and I commend everybody. You put together a spreadsheet, you're doing your thing, it's great, but not even I leaned on my own understanding.
Absolutely.
I went to a private equity firm.
Correct.
And sought someone who specifically had a high level of experience in underwriting deals, first of all, and then had a high level of education.
Correct.
The individual is not only an accountant, had a master's in finance, have underwritten almost close to, $1 billion.
Correct.
Works for one of the largest, if I name the name of the corporation, I will, LG.
Yep.
Works for one of the largest private equity firms, in the world.
Right.
That's who I went to and said, put me together a model.
Correct.
And I tweak it, just an example.
Yeah.
Because I'm dyslexic. If it were for me, if it were up to me, everything would be color categorized. You know what I mean? But he gave the model that is of the gold standard in the industry.
Right.
then I started asking for like little enhancements, like, give me my break-even ratio on occupancy and things like that. Little add-ons that I wanted to see, because as a property management mindset and asset manager mindset, there's certain things that even he doesn't see because he's an underwriter.
Right. So,
then our model, as you can see, after we've underwritten, 4 or 5 deals with it, began to evolve. Right. And I shot a quick, home video with all of our dashboard of various different spreadsheets, and shown how they all work together. But we'll do something a lot more, on the big screen, a lot more detailed. But it's really important, that we look at these spreadsheets and we're all careful, to make sure that we've got the right type of spreadsheet and the calculations are actually correct.
As we're going through this and we understand the importance of, submitting the right LOI, doing your due diligence, why would you take a free spreadsheet from someone and just trust that thing is dialed in, and then take those numbers to investors, or even take your own money for these large multifamily deals? I understand if you're going to go buy a car. Thank you for the free spreadsheet. Let me see if this car is worth something. But I'm about to buy a multi-million-dollar property, and I just took a free spreadsheet that someone handed to me.
Analyze it, yeah.
Here you go, sir.
I mean, and there's there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Let's just be really clear. So, because I don't want to offend anyone, that doesn't need to be offended. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. Right. Okay? I repeat, there's nothing wrong with it. Right. But do your homework.
Yeah, send it to someone. Let them take a look at it.
Do your homework.
Right.
Run some simple calculations to make sure that, that it's reporting correctly. Correct. That you're getting correct. Because there's, and I'm not even smart enough, and I'll get my guy to chime in. Right. But there was something on one of the spreadsheets that I sent to him. I said, I like this one. He sent back immediately and said, no, it doesn't calculate IRR incorrectly because it hasn't done something within Excel to be able to properly, and I forgot what he used or the term he used, but to properly calculate. Right. So I'll ask him what that term is and include it into this podcast and also into our live feed to Facebook. But there was something that you have to do to a certain calculation to get the right number. Absolutely. And that particular software spreadsheet wasn't doing it, and therefore the calculation was off. Right. When you're off in this game, even by fractions, that can have, a detrimental outcome. So it's just really important that we all understand, that, again, it's just like be quick but don't hurry. Do your homework, make sure. And then every quarter, every so often, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, you just run some simple evaluations through your spreadsheet to make sure everything is accurate before you continue on underwriting, because I do understand that sometimes spreadsheets can get, have issues, and and I'm no techie, but can have issues. So you just want to make sure that you're always constantly, doing your physical or on the check the spreadsheet, run some simple numbers, make sure the calculations are working correctly, and then begin to underwrite some more projects.
And I apologize for the digression. Really, honestly, man, guys. We're trying to make sure that we protect your investments, we protect your research, and when we talk about that, it's not meant to fire shots at anybody or anything of that nature. But let's get back into contracts. So we've gone through 4 points already. Next, you listed in the book that you should also gain access to the property's rent rolls and schedule. So this should also be in the contract. Why are we looking at rent rolls and schedules? Why is that an important part of the contract?
Well, you're scrutinizing to use the check against the lease. So mainly for me, it's to look at the rental amounts, making sure that there's no concessions in there that I'm not aware of, making sure that there are no month-to-month in there that I'm not aware of, making sure that most tenants have paid on time, that are not in arrears too far behind, and that'll bring me to some other key points within the contract. But it's just to make sure that everything is in alignment, because that rent roll should tell me everything. It should tell me when the tenant moved in, should tell me whether or not where they are in their lease term, whether or not they're month to month, how many months do they have. So if I see tenants that are coming up 3 months before their lease is due, they need to go into a spreadsheet that are into your new software, build them. They need to go into your alerting system to prepare to increase those rents and change those lease contracts, because now I want to get them on my lease. You're scrutinizing the rent rolls and evaluating the rent rolls. Again, we call this process a forensic audit.
Forensic audit. Love it. Then you also listed access to the property. Why is it important to have access to the property when we can just look at it online?
Yeah, you got to get there, and you have to be able to check the interior, exterior. So when I show up, I show up with two teams. Team number one is maintenance and contractor. So they're going to go and walk every single unit and take pictures, and then they're going to do their own report and come back at the end of the day. And then the second team is typically the property manager and asset manager, and they're going to do the forensic audit on the contracts, vendor contracts, review bank statements, review lease contracts. We're going through everything that has the not physically, but contractually,
right,
cash flow wise, deal with the property. So we're looking at evaluating everything, and then we're using this information to be able to thumbnail our management, begin the process of developing the framework for our property management plan for that particular asset.
Right. Makes sense. No, I love it. And then security deposits. So why is this an important part of the contract as well?
Well, I mean, legally, you want to make sure, because you're going to be responsible for those tenants' security deposits. And there's two places that you're going to be sued when you're in this business. That's going to be for security deposits, and that's usually the number one reason, and then the eviction process. But one of the main reasons fair housing, not eviction. The number one is fair housing. Okay. Number two is security deposits. But security deposits far outweigh, right now, fair housing lawsuits for most.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you've dotted those, because you're responsible for that. So if you sign the contract and you go under contract and then you execute the contract, and then you find out that the owner walked away with all the security deposit money and you didn't collect it or have that in escrows, that's on you now. That money is on you to replenish that escrow.
Wow. It's just all the responsibilities that go into, taking over multifamily.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's probably the most important, because you're responsible now. So if they've left, and we'll talk a little bit more in one of the other keys, but you're responsible for those security deposits. So, you have to make sure that money doesn't walk away. So that money needs to be held in escrow with title, and you need to verify, against the lease contracts that that's the right amount, and in the bank account, because if it all totals up to, let's just use simple numbers, $200,000, and there's only $175,000, you're responsible for that difference.
Absolutely. No, and this is all the type of stuff that I get to see working alongside you. When we acquire properties, we're out there managing them as well. So, I can see the tenants' concerns for their security deposits, or any, not discrepancies, but the need to actually know exactly what's going on with that money.
That's right.
So number 8 was, when does the money go hard? And so why is this an important part of the contract as well? You put, you don't want to find yourself behind the 8 ball. Why is it important to know when money goes hard in a contract?
Yeah, because that's your money.
Yep.
When that money goes hard, if you haven't done all your homework, there's no going back. That's no longer yours. So if you've got $250,000, $300,000 in escrow and you haven't completed your homework, or you now found out you need to back out, you're that's a tough pill to swallow. So you want to make sure that, again, that you've established a team. And if you've done anything, you've run through this drill 1,000 times. Even if you haven't purchased your first deal yet or done your first deal, you and your team should execute mock due diligence. So you understand, you walk through the drills. It may not be the real thing, but you're walking through the drills so mistakes are not being made on game day.
Right.
So, I encourage everyone to do mock due diligence. You can take Buy It, Rent It, Profit, and you can do a mock due diligence with Buy It, Rent It, Profit, the book. And I encourage everyone, all your multifamily meetup groups, you guys should be doing that, once a quarter, if not sometimes once a month. Just do a walk or a mock walkthrough of a due diligence, just so you know who would handle maintenance. What would that process look like? If you looked at the video I just posted on Facebook this morning, you had the dashboard. I wish we could pull it up, but you had the dashboard, and we will do a video on this.
Yep.
But all of the dashboard that had all of my spreadsheets, we had a due diligence checklist, and then another due diligence checklist that scored the property on a scoring perspective.
Right.
Rated a property 1 to 100. So I mean, very detailed. So at the end of the day, you got to know who, where are you gathering this information? Who's going to be on the team? What are you going to be checking when you're going through? What is maintenance looking for? What is the forensic audit team looking for? You need to know this. You need to have walked through this several times, and whether it be in your head or in a mock situation, you need to have walked through this several times with your team. And sometimes your team is yourself and I. You know what I mean? So you need to have put yourself through this. So when your time comes, you're ready to execute. So on game day, you execute as if you've been there 100 times.
Love it, man. Yep.
You're not looking like a deer in the headlight.
No.
Like you've seen some of these playoff teams. They look good during the regular season. They get into the playoffs, and they look like they've never been there before.
Correct.
So there's something to be said about just drilling home fundamentals. If you've ever played sports, whether even at a peewee league or at a high level, it's always drilling the fundamentals. It's always focusing on the fundamentals. If you ever been to a driving range of professional golfers, you'll see them laying down, alignment aids and things like that. And you're looking like, why would, because they focus on the fundamentals. Everything has, when you're out there and you're golfing, you're playing, I'm an avid golfer. Mm-hmm. So when you're out there playing and things are not going well, the first thing you always do is fall back on fundamentals.
True.
And you also then fall back on prior experiences that you've had, to be able to right the ship.
Right.
So just understanding that, and if you don't have prior experience, this is why the mock is so important, or being in a group like the multifamily matrix is so important, so you can, glean the knowledge from others.
Correct.
So you're able to, if you can't get your own experience, gain the experience from others. So you're able to walk through this process several times. And so when it's your time, you're ready.
I love it. Then number 9, you put built-in financing contingencies. So this is, allowing yourself to back out of deals if you
just
can't.
Protect yourself.
So tell me more about that. Like, why is that part of the contract?
Just really, again, to protect the group, from getting into a project. And if I need to back out, I can back out without that money going hard.
Got it.
So it's just a way to protect yourself, a form of asset protection for the general partners going into a deal, to be able to have those triggers. And you want to sit down with your attorneys and make sure that your contract has several clauses, based on financing, based on your ability to raise the capital. Because a lot of people may not be syndicating. They may have the capital, they may not. But for those who are syndicating or raising money per deal, you have a time frame, let's say 7 days, that you're trying to raise the money. And you might have 10 commitments.
Right.
Then when it comes time for you to go into contract, 3 of those commitments are like, oh, man, I had a death in the family, and I had to allocate those dollars somewhere. I found out that my brother-in-law needed, the money to start his business, and so I lent him the money. So you no longer have those commitments. So you just want to make sure that you have some contingencies in place that protects you in case, you're not able to execute.
Got it.
Where that money doesn't go hard.
I love it. Then we've got set aside escrow money for rent. And so this is something that's often overlooked. You wrote in the book. Why are we setting aside escrow money for rent?
Good. This is one of the best keys.
Yeah.
Is because you might close somewhere in the 20th of the month, right? The owner collects all the rent. You go under contract, and the owner takes all that rent money and leaves. Now you're in the month of January, and you need, you're basically now giving away free rent. You can't collect rent until February. So, you want to make sure that rent money for whatever month is closing is being held in escrow with the title company, your title company, their title, somebody's title company, that rent is being held. So whatever is being collected by the management company is being put into the escrow, not to the seller's pocket.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. This is a lot of stuff. So
especially for the smaller operator, so you're anywhere under 80 units.
Yeah.
You're dealing with non-institutional type of.
Yeah, you don't want to be stuck holding that bill.
You don't want to be stuck holding that bag. So at the end of the day, and you see this happen. So not everybody's syndicating 3,000 unit projects.
Correct.
A lot of our listeners might be doing their first 20 unit, first 80 unit. These are the things where you might not be dealing with a high level of sophistication when it comes to the seller's representation, the seller, maybe sometimes even the buyer. This might be their first deal or so. So, these things are really important, for me at all levels, no matter your experience. Sometimes this stuff gets overlooked as well.
Absolutely. And we got one of our members in the Matrix. He's looking to buy his first 5 units. So that's exciting.
At that level, it can happen.
Yeah. And so we once again, we want to make sure that you're protected. Another one that you listed is equipment. So, why are we listing equipment in the contract as well?
Yeah, because, when you start looking at, bigger projects, even at the 20 and 80 units, equipment is going to be involved. So, the lawnmower, tools and things of that nature. So if there's certain things that you see that you feel that needs to be a part of that particular property, then you need to, to establish that in the contract.
Right.
I know I've done that when we bought Park Plaza. There was things, that I was like, no, that needs to come with the property. That needs to be associated with the contract. There was a thing, I think, one of the videos, one of the units didn't have a stove because they were going to turn it into an Airbnb, and they just had the flat top thing. I'm like, no, this is a unit. This is you advertise this as a 22 unit apartment building, but yet this one doesn't have a stove. It needs to have a stove. So I had them put a brand new stove in there. So there's certain things that you'll want to look at, and this is not necessarily equipment, but this still falls, whether it's equipment or, any kind of items you feel like the property should have that it doesn't have. This is the time where your contractors usually come back and say, hey, yeah, so-and-so unit doesn't have a stove, so-and-so unit doesn't have an AC, so-and-so unit AC is about to go out. You'll need to have them replace it. So there's a myriad of work orders that may be turned in that says to the seller, you've got to fix these things, or you have to discount me on the price. Roof repairs, we found this. Unit repairs, we found these items. Common area repairs, we found these items. Plumbing, we found these items. Electrical, we found these items. The security cameras are not operational. These are issues with we found these items. This needs to be bought up. You know what I mean? So if it's there and it's attached to the property, we expect it to be fully operational.
Right.
Or for it not to be, or for us to have that removed off the price.
So when we took over a property in Tampa, there was a huge tool shed, the Humphrey Street. And so what about stuff like that as well? So is that something that should be
all
looked
those
at as
tools?
Well? Like
they
could say, oh, those are all ours, and
So if you expect as the buyer that those tools are going to be yours, and when you open up that tool shed that it to be full, then you need to have that in the contract that everything in that tool shed belongs to you. Lawnmower, tools, whatever it may be. Sometimes it doesn't. Often it doesn't. The management takes that with them, or the ownership takes that with them. But if that's what you want, and you feel like that is needs to be a part of the deal, then you need to specify that. Might be special equipment for an elevator, that is associated with it. So it's not always. Don't take for granted that item to fix that elevator needs to be left behind.
Right. Or it's, and also you said in the book that you want to ask, because it might be yours to keep or to throw away. So you might assume that they're going to take this stuff with them, and then you get there when you own the property, you have all this stuff that you have to toss. So making sure who's going to get rid of what.
Absolutely, yeah. On the reverse, on the flip side of the coin, Yep. So
man, this is so extensive. So you guys, make sure you're paying attention, and join us in the Matrix as well. We're developing investors weekly. We're offering coaching calls. All of these resources, our spreadsheets, our analyzers are available to Matrix members as well. But the final key that you put on this is existing contracts disclosure. Why are we disclosing any existing contracts? Why is that a key part of the?
Yeah. So, for example, when you're dealing with vendor contracts, which ones you can get out of, which ones you can't.
Got it.
So if you're in laundry contracts, you might want to come in and put your own laundry equipment in.
Right.
It might make sense, and own the laundry equipment outright. But when you buy the property, there might be a contract, for the laundry equipment in place.
Right.
Or there might be a warranty for the roof.
Okay.
But in the contract, it says, if this property is ever sold, the warranty is voided unless the new buyer pays X amount of dollars, and then now you have to pay X amount of dollars. But if you're not reading through the contracts, you're not going through this, then you assume that if something goes wrong with the roof, you're like, oh, no, we're under warranty. This is a brand new roof. Call the contractor out here.
Right.
And the contractor's like, no, you owe us $12,000 because if you read in item 4.27 in the contract, it clearly states if the property or when the property is sold that the contract, if still under warranty, is null and void unless the new buyer pays, some sort of assignment fee.
Got it.
So, you have to read the fine print. If it's not in writing, then it didn't happen. So, you want to make sure, you read everything that's in writing. Read through all those vendor contracts.
Absolutely.
Comb through them.
Absolutely. Man, this was a doozy. So 12 key points.
I'm going to throw a 13th in there.
Oh, go ahead, throw it in there, little 13.
Sometimes I shot a video with this topic. Sometimes you're going to buy a property and there's going to be some delinquent. When we're looking at that rent roll, we see a few people that are delinquent. We didn't really go into it, but I want to drop this. If you find a few people that are delinquent in there, you don't necessarily want to inherit them. So you may be, but if there's a few individuals that you notice that are delinquent, and maybe even the month that you're buying the property, they're delinquent, and you notice they're habitual, you may want to have the current owner, go ahead and file. You should have the current owner file for eviction for those tenants, like what we did. So when we take over the property, the eviction process is already underway, paid by the seller that's vacating. Yep. But the process is already underway. Let them be the bad guys to evict. Let them deal with the headache of starting the process of the eviction process. So, you want to look at and make sure you obviously delinquencies are really key. Looking at when you're buying these properties, looking at your tenants that you're inheriting, and look at how they pay, and look at their history. Look at those ledgers. That's what we're going through, is looking at the history of payment, and looking at how they pay and making sure that the individuals pay on time. And if they're not, they're habitual late payers, you may want to go ahead and get rid of them before you take over the property, so it doesn't become your headache.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for breaking this all down for us. As we are on our journey to buying properties and investing, it's always great to have you in the studio, B, and dropping your knowledge. As you say, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Always king.
So make sure you guys tune into the podcast of the King with Two Eyes, Bryan Chavis. And thank you so much, man. I look forward to speaking with you next week, brother. And
see you guys next week. And special news drop. We have the first conference that's going to be certifying individuals in property management, asset management, and multifamily evaluations.
Yep.
And syndications. We're going to be coming out with the CRIS, Certified Rental Investment Specialist.
Absolutely.
It's going to be the conference. It's going to be the place to be if you want to actually get a designation in this industry. If you're a licensed real estate professional or broker in the state of Florida, it offers CE credits by the state. So our courses have been approved by the state of Florida. So it's of high quality.
Exactly.
We are actually giving away the designations. Certified Rental Investment Specialist. That's going to give you the designation, the ability to show that you have knowledge in property management, asset management, multifamily underwriting, multifamily syndication. So, you want to May 30th.
Go to bryanchavis.com. You're going to get all the information. And so bryanchavis.com, we're going to have all the information listed on our website, all the dates, all the times. And make sure you guys join us, because we want to make sure that you get certified and It's going to be a great event. So make sure you guys go to bryanchavis.com. We got a free giveaway, bryanchavis.com/LOI for that letter of intent. Once again, B, thank you so much for joining me in the studio, man, and dropping all this content, brother. Talk to you next week, brother.
Me, man. See you next week.
All right.